Perfect. Um, okay, I'll start. Hello, everyone. Hello, folks. Welcome. My name is Hilena. I am one of the children and youth mental health counselor at CCVT, stands for Canadian Center for Victims of Torture. Just a little bit of background of just for context. I went to University of Toronto Scarborough. My major was in health studies and psychology, so that's the background that I came with to this work. I have been working at the Scarborough office for about a year and a half, so still very new to the position and just learning and also offering in insights that I have um, gained and have been sharpened over the years. So I'll share from those experiences just for context of what CCVT is or the work that we do. Canadian Center for Victims of Torture is a non-profit organization founded by a group of Toronto doctors, lawyers, and social service professionals in the 1980s and in the early 1980s. CCVT aids survivors in overcoming the lasting effects of torture and war in partnership with organizations and different communities. The center supports survivors in the process of successfully integrating into Canadian society, as well as working for their protection and safety. Also raises awareness on issues faced by our clients or service users. So within that framework, we have different programs that focus on settlement and mental health, one-on-one counselings, programs that addresses issues for newcomers and their families, so just children and youth focused programs, anti-human trafficking, and also sponsorship programs and volunteer focused support, which focused on peer support or peer mentorship or of that nature. So I'm one of the child and youth mental health counselor. There is about 4 of us now at the moment, so I'll be sharing a little bit of my experience and how and what I have noticed. So it might not address a lot of topics other youth counselors might be experiencing at different offices. Just with saying that, I want to just start off talking about the population that I see. So I'm children and youth, but most of the youth that I see currently are from age 18 until 30. So I'll be talking about experiences within that framework. There were a couple of points that I just want to talk about that me and Nadia have touched on earlier before the session. So one of the things that I noticed in this position or working with children, youth specifically, is things around boundaries. I think what I have noticed is like, where does a boundary end in terms of I will offer support, but where does advocating for a client's capacity or a client's involvement in working toward their mental health or their settlement process. I think that's something that I have wrestled with. I've noticed I've wrestled with a lot. Not making myself or just like counselors in general be the only lifeline or the only support. So I think knowing and acknowledging and reaffirming and assuring that with youth, like specifically, that you're there to offer support, you're there, but at the same time, like reassuring that they also have capacity, like they're the advocates of their own experiences, connecting them with other resources outside of myself or CCBT. That's something that I have realized more and more, that I cannot be like the only lifeline. That lifeline actually looks more sustainable when there are different organizations and different people connected to an individual. So that might look what I do right now, or like what that looks like for me is, if a client or for youth has an interest, be it in a program that either CCBT offers or outside of CCBT, connecting them to the organization, connecting them to the program, making sure that like whoever is supporting them is connected to myself or CCBT, or knows that that the client receives service here. So that's definitely has been what has been helping with creating a good boundary with cell phone service users. Another topic or another point that I wanted to kind of just flesh out was the use of language and jargons. I have noticed initially, because the title of the position says mental health, creating programs means that it might include having mental health and the information session or in the workshops. And I think a lot of the communities that I have worked with, there can be a little bit of hesitance or resistance of like mental health, and which makes sense, if that is a clinical terminology for a lot of folks or communities, then engaging with the workshop can feel like I'm okay, like I don't need to attend sessions of such nature. So what I have noticed is maybe talking more about wellness, how do we manage stress, and giving more of the platform and using the language that a client or a youth is using as a way to discuss what they might be experiencing. So nowadays, I don't fully say like, oh, mental health issues, although like that is the topic that the youth knows that we're discussing, um, using languages that are not really clinical or very, yeah, I think I'll stick with the word clinical to engage in conversations about their state of well-being is important or has been important. So I think in doing that, advocating for agency comes in, like agency of uh, what they use to even what a client uses to even engage their own mental health. Sometimes it can feel like, yeah, like I do this, like I dance as a way to kind of cope. So like using that opportunity to talk about like, okay, so like how can we then incorporate these practices as a way to talk about like our state of health, or like the state of a client's mental health. So I think language has been something that I'm more aware of now. I think the third point is around social support. um, I think it touches in with language as well, in a sense. Sometimes, like here, the programs that we have something called Summer Quest, where a lot of youth and children partake in programs and activities that we have. We dedicate 2 months, 1 month for children and 1 month for the youth, to create activities or to go and explore Toronto as a way to create community or to create meaningful relationship. That event of itself might not seem like, oh, it's a mental health focus program where like it addresses it's not created like to tackle mental health, but the benefit of it though is it does like offer it does offer social support, and it tackles like social isolation or issues that comes out of that, especially if a youth is new to the country. It creates that opportunity to connect. So social support is something that that is very significant, or even when creating programs, if it doesn't focus on mental health, using it as a way to create engagement to benefit that. So that's something that I have noticed being very beneficial. CCBD has had a program to help support youth and children with homework. So we have something called Homework Club that has been going on for a longer period of time before even me coming to this place or to this position. after COVID, it has been a little bit difficult. We have noticed in the sense of um, youth or children actively coming into the office, but that's a place where it has benefited a lot of families and a lot of youth. The responses that people have to counselors who have been in this place and have actually done the work has been really great, and seeing the relationship the youth have created with one another, the ways that it has been a place to kind of just confine in the counselor, creating more safe space. So that's something that has really worked and still works. So social support, I guess. I might be speeding up a little bit fast. So Nadia, if there's a need for me to slow down, I would be happy to do that. I think another point for sure, I don't know if we might take a minute to kind of just stay on this point a little bit longer, is how like assessing clients' needs or service users' needs, and that how it changes. A lot of the client base that I've seen at the beginning of me coming to this position and now has shifted. Um, so I think focusing on that has been really helpful in order to offer good service. So I think in the beginning of me joining in, a lot of the youth that I worked with were from Eastern Africa, a lot of Horn African countries or communities from places of, yeah, from Horn Africa. So uh, as individuals, definitely like you focus on the client that is in front of you and like what the needs are, but always having it in context, in the context of the communities that they come from or the communities that they are part of, so that having a greater understanding of, okay, how can I then provide support, even it offers the cultural sensitivity lenses, so that you're not you're providing support that actually makes sense for the client. So from that, in the beginning of the year, now I think most of the clients that I see are folks that come that are from Uganda, or are in relation with within the Ugandese community. So just paying attention in the larger sense, like what is the need within the community, like what are we noticing. And as I mentioned earlier, like the client base that I'm seeing right now tends to be within mid-20s or close to 30s. So in terms of employment, so like what is a need for youth within that age bracket. So I think assessing clients' needs based on like who I see up like in the right in front of me, but also within the context of what community they come from is very key, or has been helpful. I think that also ties into the reframing of how I see like this place, I guess, or like this position. It has changed from um, I provide counseling session on a one-on-one. Also, I think communicating that I'm not a licensed therapist, or creating that like understanding not just once, but like an ongoing basis with a client. Okay, like I provide this session. There's also creating workshops and information sessions for youth to be like more connected to like resources that they need. So I think having these little responsibilities, but I think what has kind of tied it for me is like seeing this position as like more of like managing cases, in terms of there are cases as a collective, there are cases collectively that I see, and how can I provide service, one-on-one service, but at the same time, Nadia, I think I'm having little awesome. Yeah, just I think one of the point that I wanted to touch base on was around the reframing of this particular position, in terms of seeing what are the key important things like a youth might need. So one-on-one session with a client. So reframing my position as well, that I'm not a therapist, or I mean, I'm not a licensed therapist or a psychiatrist or a psychotherapist. And I think that is like ongoing, not just within one session that I have, so that the client or the youth has an understanding of what my limits are. And I think within that, it's helpful to create like that understanding for myself as well, and for the client. Um, One another point I do want to kind of flesh out more is around stigma, or seeing mental health support, I think in general, coming in from different communities, how we see mental health issue varies, or just even what mental health is. So I think tackling resistant sometimes is creating space for parents also to be part of the conversation, especially if the client is younger kids. I have noticed how working with the parents on normalizing maybe issues, and not making it feel like it is something that a parent did or a caregiver did, or like something of an issue that happened in there, and raising the child. So kind of normalizing that this is part of um, a lot of folks' experience, and that there are support. So focusing more on what is out there, what the client can receive. So I think that has been something that I have noticed, not as much, but with few of the clients that I've worked with, like focusing on reassuring parents, and the resources that are out there. And still, I think connecting it to language, not making it very technical based, but more of um, needs based, like what a client might need, so that and focusing on what resources are out there, so that parents are more inclined to utilizing the resources. With, I think, older youth, yeah, with older youth closer to like late 20s or like 30s, um although again there can be a little bit of resistance about seeking support that might say mental health. I think once there's that relationship about these are experiences that would make sense within the framework of like what a client might have experienced. So um reassuring, reaffirming is something that for sure has been a reality for myself, I think, like working in this position. So just um and also just connecting with other people who might have had similar experiences as the client, um like not just like disclosing like what the other person in the room has went through, but creating space for the youth themselves, like to share amongst themselves, creating guidelines for like what safe space could look like, especially if it's online, and like how we can engage with each other's stories. I think it kind of creates that comfort. Again, I try to not say like this is like how mental health gets like how we take care of our mental health, but like this is how we take care of our wellness, so that there isn't a stigma of like, oh, you're getting support from such and such people or from such organizations. So they're more inclined to just attend workshop um, and share amongst one another without feeling like I'm like getting a mental health support. So um, I think that's something that I've noticed around stigma, or with youth and with children that we work with. For now, these are the points that have been um, focused uh, for myself in this place. But if there's other things that come up, I will definitely share with Nadia as well. Yeah, just tying it back to also like what has helped me in my journey of coming to this work, also like just as children and youth counselor, I have worked with, not worked with, let me say, like I have volunteered with my community, church affiliated community for a long period of time, just helping with programs or just creating space for youth to have conversations among themselves. I was a youth as well, so that was something that kind of helped me. Oh, like it's actually like really important to kind of create space for you to talk amongst themselves and to create that space. So that was something that drew me to this position, or so to the work. I came to Canada as well at a young age, so that also had an influence of like, oh, I wish there were some resources that I knew existed, and how can I share that? So I think knowing there are formations or resources or mentorships or connection opportunities out there, or that we can create spaces like that um, for youth, I think definitely that had influence in why I wanted to do the work that I do. Um, like prior to working into this position, I did more, like most of the work that I have done was within research. So even now, I do see that being an asset in terms of uh, I get very excited about like creating resource, um, like how, what would I call it? Resource books, or like a kind of guide um, to share like amongst other colleagues or myself, that can kind of like comes in like helpful. So I think being working within research has helped me to kind of be more resourceful about finding what's out there. Outside of that, I definitely say being active, I think, on a community as well, to kind of see like what issues is out there, or what are conversations people are having, even if it's not like youth specific, but in just in general. um that's something that has helped me to kind of sharpen my eyes. um yeah.
I have a question for you.
Yes, you do.
What were some of your biggest surprises, or maybe not misconceptions, but things that you thought might work differently when you took on the role and started doing like the practical stuff? Like, what things were the biggest learning curves for you?
Yeah. I don't know. That question is funny for me because I think going into this place, like one thing I thought definitely was like everything is very ordered, in the sense like one plus one is two. No, definitely not. Like I think when working with like youth, I think just because you have offered insight or information, it doesn't mean that someone is going to take that and run with it. Um, just I think that is a very humbling experience for myself. Um, so I think that was definitely a curveball that um, I am here to support, but that I can't, you can't save, or you can't, um, the change that you would want to see in others, or in like in different things, takes time. I think that's definitely something that I'm still trying to like hold on or remember. Um, and also I think how much important it is to connect with other organizations, or like other counselors outside of like here at CCBT, or just even counselors here, like how everyone is like a resource hub. Everyone has like is very insightful and has information, and like the way to do that is to connect with people outside the organization. So focusing, putting more effort on that is something that I'm still trying to do more, but it's been a learning curve.
Another question for you. Of course, we have to maintain confidentiality. But can you think of any like examples from your work that you've had in this past little while? Um, any challenges specifically around mental health or with working with newcomer youth that you think might be like useful to share with anyone who might be watching, and just some practices that you use to move things along?
Mm. Um, okay, I think trying to think of like, yeah, there are like two youth that I have been seeing for about 6 months, and their siblings. They came to CCBT just to kind of get support on like registering for school, or no, they were already registered for school, but just like getting some support because their parents wanted to get support at the center, but they also wanted for their children to provide like to receive any kind of services that was like focused on youth. They came, we were very like interested in some requests that we had going on, so they were part of it. Like they attended every activities that we had hosted. But because I knew in terms of like what the parents had went through to come to Canada, it was very like it was very evident that like they also had experienced something, um, but they weren't ready to have conversations about like what happened before he came to Canada. So I think building trust took time before bringing issues of um, trauma that they had witnessed. So I think myself and my colleague, who's not here at the moment, but we took um, the time to get to know them on a personal level, and also just see like what they need outside of school, and having a mentor. They're connected to mentors here, so just creating that space for them to build trust was important. um, with one of the client, like the sister, I knew she was very um I knew she had experienced or she has witnessed um more than the brother, and that there was a desire to talk about it. But when we hosted, or when we had a photography based workshop, she was very open to talk about what she has seen through art. So when we talked about like what the art that she has created meant, she was very open to talk about it, with parameters. Like there was limits to what she would say. So I think using that opportunity then to check in, and to allow her to speak a little bit more about like what, like how does that make you feel, um, to be more open about it, not like suppress what she has went through, which in the larger sense then was like space for us to encourage her, and the parents, if they were open to see a therapist or like children and youth psychotherapists that are connected to us. So um, I think that's like a more vivid image or an example that I have in mind, like within recent time. I don't know if that's helpful or
Yeah,
uh,
that's really helpful. I wanted just to follow up on that. Is that you talked about like you could see like you needed to work on the trust.
mhm.
Could you share your observations on how you recognize that there was a lack of trust, or that the youth were still like working on it? Like what things did you kind of sense that made you think this might be one of the issues that they were facing?
Yeah. Initially when like they would come to the program, of course, parents encouraged it. It was an excitement, like, I want to go and participate. The brother was more like excited, like they would show up, but the sister was more hesitant, to kind of like not wanting to engage, sitting by herself on the side, like even if some of there were two of her friends in the room with her, um wouldn't talk a lot, just more to herself, would be on the phone. So over time, I think there was like a whole week dedicated like for activities. So there will be one event that she would miss out, but another event that she would show up. And I think within that time, not really like giving her space, that was very important, like not forcing or like making sure like she participated in everything, but like encouraging her to kind of like that it would be fun if she was to choose to participate, and if she wasn't feeling it, not to kind of push on that. And I think when she saw her brother and also a couple of her friends like engaged in it, she was more drawn to that, checking in as well, like after event was done, checking in like, oh, how was that, like what did you learn from it, like what are you taking from this like event, just more engaging with her on a personal level, like not just like, oh, you're attending a program, so like awesome, like you must attend a program, but more of like we actually want you to have fun and enjoy, not just like attend because you're like expected to attend a program. So I think over time that built like, oh, these people actually care about me, and they actually want me to do well. So I think that over time was building trust, and also seeing like other counselors who are working with her parents, knowing that like, oh no, they're actually working to offer like us as a whole, as a family, like support. I think that was building more trust for sure.
My last question for you is you're listening to a lot of deep things all day, every day. So
Mm,
working with these youth and by extension their families and listening to a lot of trauma narratives.
mhm.
How do you take care of yourself? Like what are you finding what works for you? What doesn't work? What are still your challenges in this work?
Yeah. Um, I'm still figuring that out. I think for sure, having people who understand that you need an outlet is helpful. Both colleagues and friends in general. Like I'm very grateful for my colleagues that we talk about like how we're feeling, what's going on, to reassure one another that like it's not just like I focus to issue, but like a lot of us like experience like these emotions, hearing client stories and knowing like, oh, like I carry this with me. So I think at the core for me has been like, oh, there are people who care about me to know like what I'm personally experiencing, both colleagues and friends. Outside of that, I think although like I'm still trying to implement that is like a boundary. So like after work, um, it is good for me not to read my emails, not to respond, unless it's emergency, of course. Like if it's an emergency, like we have to, um, a life and death situation emergency. But also like having to talk about like what is emergency, like where do I draw the line? So, um, I think nowadays I'm more adamant about not checking emails or not engaging after office hours, and trying to find like creative ways for my own self that I'm interested in or like that I find joyful, like to implement throughout the week, not just waiting for the week. So um, I think that gives me space to create or like to kind of get out whatever has I'm carrying. Yeah, I think those are a couple of stuff that that for sure has helped. Yeah.
Any closing remarks?
Um, yeah, I think I definitely will say like working with diverse communities, um, it's it's very important to kind of come at it. You might have worked with children and youth in different capacities and like feel like you're an expert, but I think it's so important to know to like to kind of remind like self that um the person is expert of their own experience, and that like being in this place is a privilege in a way that like I'm here to direct and redirect and like listen and hear, like notice what a need is and respond out of that place and advocate or like help a youth advocate for themselves. So I think that's something that I'm constantly trying to hold on and remember. So yeah, I think that's important, definitely to hold on to that. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, my friend. That was awesome.
Thank you for having me, Nadia. I will say some thoughts might not have been fleshed out as much, but yeah, these are just like personal experiences. So yeah, thank you for
Uh,
having me again.
and very lastly, how can folks get in contact with CCBT or
Awesome.
you if they needed to?
Okay. As I was saying that to Nadia earlier, I can definitely share a slide of like points that I just talked about or discussed today, and maybe in the slide can have we have different offices for CCBT. This is Scarborough office, so have email and contact number of the organization if folks want to reach out. Or I can also share my email and my phone number at the moment or right now, whichever seems better.